It's been a while. I was honestly planning on recording this like a month ago, like back in October, but a bunch of real world stuff happened that I couldn't control, and then I got sick last week when I was supposed to record. I can only record on Mondays because that's when nobody's home but me, so I have nice and quiet, which I finally have the chance now to record. So I'm hopefully planning to get this done, then go to sleep, and then do the editing tomorrow, and also tomorrow post it. Today's Monday, by the way, for reference of timing. I don't know if that matters or anything to anyone watching. But anyways, this video, obviously, from the title, I'm just going to talk and yap about my navy I've developed in space engineers over the many, many years of my life I've spent playing the game because I absolutely love it. And I am very, very excited for all the stuff in Space Engineers 2. I've already played some of it, and like just the building where you don't have to reach over for the weird keys on the other side of the keyboard. You can just hold down, I think Shift it is, and use the WASD. It's so smooth and it's so better compared to what Space Engineers 1 is. But anyways, let's just go on to what you clicked on this video to watch for. Me yapping about my SIPs. This is the Attack SIP Mark 1. It's the first large grid SIP I've ever made, I'm pretty sure. And it wasn't an actual real combat vessel. It was essentially a pirating vessel. I made it with the motive that I made it when I'm pretty sure it was what was it? The Warfare 2 DLC came out, is when they added the custom turret controllers, and I'm pretty sure that's when, because I saw a video about the ball turrets that people were making, and I'm like, you know what, I want to make one of those too. So I went ahead and made them, and I'm like, well, now I have these, what I need some sort of platform to put them on that moves around and test it. So that's where the motive to create something like this came from. And it was very limited, as you can see. It's basically made out of entirely weak uh, pillar support beam bar type block things, and it just has like, I'm pretty sure that's light armor on the outside for the armor plating on it. I do like the color scheme and the textures and everything I was going for. It does look really cool. Doesn't make too much sense, but it was pretty cool, and I did in fact use it for rating, because around the time, I'm not sure if it came out after I made it or before the Warfare DLC. It was the Economy DLC where they added the stations on the planets, and basically what I would do is I'd go into my, like, the admin command things, disable or sealed, and then use the remote control block because the AI blocks were out at this point, and I would fly over, set down a GPS point, and then tell it to fly there, and I would just make like a fleet of maybe 3 to 5 of these. They would fly there and basically just attack it, and then with this whole story of the attack SIP class SIPs that I've made, I used to take these outposts and equip them with turrets that I place on them, just so I had more fighting to do, because I just found it quite entertaining to do. And with this SIP, the first one wasn't really that good, and I know it has a super powerful gun on the bottom, but it doesn't work well because it can't tell the SIP to turn left or right, and then the turret aims itself, because the turret only has a hinge, so it can only move up and down. And most of the time, the SIP just wobbles around while staying in its one position, and it's very hard to get a hit off. But sometimes it did, and it did a lot of damage, but most of the time it was just done with the machine gun ball turrets from underneath it. This, I guess, is just like powered by a couple reactors, which doesn't make a lot of sense because you don't need that much. But it's when the Warfare DLC came out, and the small reactors they added looked really cool, so I decided to add those. But there's really not much to talk about this one. It had like the bare bones, less than bare bones minimum stuff equipped to it, but they get pretty advanced real fast with each version of the SIP I made. This is the Attack SIP Mark II. As you can see, there is a lot to talk about this one because this was a complete overhaul improvement compared to the Mark 1. First of all, completely new color scheme, and you're going to see this with most of the SIPs we talk about. As usually when I make a new SIP, it's because I create a new color scheme for my faction, and then I just really don't want to repaint the older SIP, so I'm like, you know what, I might as well just make a new one. And that's going to stay consistent with almost all the SIPs we talk about, except for like the late game ones, I guess you could call them. There's no real late game. It's like the most current time, I guess you could say. But we'll talk about that when we get to them. So for this one, I decided that I had room on the sides of the panels where I could put the turret blocks. So I went ahead and I did that. At the time, I still didn't know that the like actual turrets themselves, like the larger ones, did more damage than the smaller variant ones. But I was still a kid at the time, so that's probably why I didn't know that. You'll see that with the upcoming Mark 3 or whatever. But this one was, I have to say, the most powerful and the one I'm actually most proud of the attack SIP class that I've made. I love the color scheme for this one. It looks a lot cleaner and a lot nicer than the other one. And I'm pretty sure I used the clean armor block for this, so that's probably why it looks so clean. I kept the flashing lights on it. I'm not really sure how I feel about those now. At the time, I thought it was cool because I was using these SIPs on Pertam, and there was a lot of sandstorms, and it just kind of looked cool to see these eerie red flashing lights slowly approaching you. I just thought it was a really cool idea. And these ones actually have the jukebox inside of them, and I like to play the pirate song that's in the game that you can play on them. And that's because I literally did the same thing with these as I did the Mark 1. These ones were just better. So I'd have like a fleet of 10 to 20 of these all playing that, just flying slowly towards an outpost or something. And it was just really fun, honestly, to play with these ones. I might use them again for a bit just to try it out. I doubt I'll have the same amount of fun as I did as a kid, but this was really the peak of this class of SIP. Unfortunately, it only goes downhill from here. But continuing on to this, still no AI blocks to it. It's still using the GPS system, unfortunately. But it does have an actual interior now, so you're not exposed to the weather, though the weather didn't really damage you back in the times because only the like current update or whatever added where you can get affected and harmed from being out in weather or whatever. But it has an inside and I guess what you could call a bridge in a way, because it's not just one block you're using to pilot the SIP. It's a kind of like its own separate room in the front. So I'm considering it a bridge. This one has a lot more thrusters compared to the other one. As you can tell, there's 4 thrusters on each side compared to the one on the front and back of the previous version, and only 2 on the sides, because the issue with the Mark 1 is that once like when the front or the back turret got sawed off, not turret, thruster got sawed, it just kept going forward or backward, whichever one got taken out, and it just go until it crashed, and it would just never ever stop. So this one, I went ahead and I learned from my mistakes, added more, and then I saw that I had room to add a large good thruster in the middle, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just do that for extra measure? Honestly, I think it's because I thought the sip was going to be really, really heavy and that I needed them. I really didn't, though. I could have just stuck with the, how many is that? Six on the front and back small grid thrusters. But I guess I just thought the larger ones look cool, which will be replaced with hydrogen the next one, but that's for the next sip. Uh, and I think that's all for this sip. Not too much to talk about. I think it's still. Oh yes, it has more reactors in it than the Mark One, just two more. Not too much, I guess. I think it might have actually needed that power because of the large grid thrusters. But I guess the more you're using, the more power you need. On to the next one. This is the Mark III attack sip, and from here for this class of sip, it just goes completely downhill and completely derailed with one of the sips in this class, which shouldn't even be in this class, but we'll get to that problem when we get to it. For this one, let's just start with, I guess, the positives it has. The first one being is this is when the AI blocks came out. So it had the ability to use the AI blocks. So it had smarter AI than just plopping out a point and using a GPS system. Sometimes I didn't even need to put down a GPS to make them fly to enemy bases. This one, as you can see, I tried putting sensors on it because I thought that would help the AI blocks. They weren't that smart as they are now. I'm pretty sure they're smarter. At least that's what I've seem to have found out. They seem way smarter than they used to be. But this is just straight when they came out, and they weren't really that good. And I'll go into what these SIPs did when I talk about the cons. But staying on the positive side, the interior now has or had beds in it and everything. I say has because I don't use SIP anymore. But it has beds in it for crew if there was even ever going to be crew in it, two bathrooms, and then this is what I really do consider a bridge. There was several control areas in there to control things, and uh another pro of the SIP was that it was fully insulated, it was airtight, so you could go into space or other planets without atmospheres with this on here. Speaking of that, there's also the hydrogen thrusters, which is where we start to cross into the failure territory. They worked amazing. In fact, you could take out three of the four main large engines, and this thing would still fly like there was no problem at all, like it wasn't even damaged. But somehow, for some reason, I just didn't add a thruster to the top of it. I guess I could just do that because I wanted this to go into space, but I don't know why, but I just, for some reason, didn't add one facing upwards. So it made it very hard to control in space. But at least it made the SIP a lot faster and a lot stronger. But it did take away a lot of room because I had to fit all the hydrogen tanks inside the armor and everything, and then also in between the armor and the inside of the SIP, so it didn't look ugly or whatever. But nowadays I have better ways of integrating those into my SIPs and making them look way better. But another, because we're on to the downsides already, uh, is the landing gear. And this is where the AI problem comes in. And you would think that the landing gear is good for this, because originally the other two SIPs, I would need to make a custom landing port or something for them to have something to be able to land on, and then something to connect the stairwells at the back of the SIP on the outside to the ground so you could actually get onto the SIP and go inside it. But I thought maybe adding landing gear was the best idea, and it went terribly wrong. The AI liked to do this thing where if two SIPs were too close to each other, they would just fly. The bottom one would just fly up and then get stuck on the other one's landing gears, and they just like freak out because they're stuck together, and they would just start spinning around in all directions. It's absolutely wild. And then they just keep doing that until they eventually either just fly out literally into space or they crash into the ground, which was a very, very common occurrence you'd see happening when I had like a minimum of five of these ships flying together. So I couldn't fly these in big fleets like I needed to, because onto the next negative factor of this was the turrets. As you see, there's no large grid turret blocks for this. This is because I was still a kid and I was thinking, oh, well, these are the same, or called the same type of weapon as the large grid things, so obviously they must do the same damage amount, is what my kid brain thought, because they were the same size. Like if you looked at the large grid turret and you looked at just the barrel and then you looked at the small grid one, it kind of looks like it just shoot the same round and therefore do the same damage. At least that's what I thought as a kid, which it obviously isn't true. It does like way, way less damage, which is why, because I thought that at the time, I thought, well, the large grid turret takes up so many space, and the small grid custom turrets can take up so little, so why don't I just fit three of these in a row like a battleship type turret, and I'll be good to go. Now, obviously, most of the targets I was fighting, I was still pirating at the time, was the outpost, and they were mainly consisted of light armor, so they still did a lot of piercing, and especially with three of them, it went through the armor pretty quickly still, but it wasn't as powerful. But this one, I guess one of the actual like pros of it is that the armor on the sides of it, like around it, are sloped, which I thought would deflect bullets. Which apparently bullet deflecting is in the game, or at least I've heard of it like one or two times on YouTube Shorts or something. I'm pretty sure it's a thing in the game. I don't know if it was when I made this. It might be something new. I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty sure I've seen like rounds deflect off armor sometimes. But that's what I was thinking. Like, what if for some reason the enemy launches fighter jets at me? I need protection from at the top because the heavy turrets are on the bottom, and they would obviously not fly in the way of the heavy turrets and be up top. So I went ahead and made the armor sloped to protect from upward attacks, and then also I added more powerful anti small ship turrets on the top of it, which did really, really good too at deflecting smaller ships like that. Which I guess is kind of good, but they could have been better and not had I think it's the assault cannon turret, it's just straight in the middle of it. It was good when it hit, but it was mainly the autocannons doing the heavy lifting for it. And I'm pretty sure that is all for. No, it's not. The last thing to say about this is, I don't know if it's a good pro or a con or whatever, but the beams holding the outside armor to the actual like interior hull of the ship were changed out for heavy armor blocks, so it'd be harder to like shoot those than have the giant armor plate fall than to just not armor it. But that's all I have for this one. The issue with the Mark IV attack ship is that I have no evidence of it ever existing. I don't know what happened, but somehow I never took any screenshots of it, and I never saved it or something. I have no clue why, but I have my memory of it, which I'll go ahead and just tell you about it. It was never finished to start off with. It was under construction until it just like I randomly abandoned it or something. I completely don't know what happened to it. But I do know it was unfinished, and I remember how it was supposed to be. There were still not going to be any heavy turrets on it. It was going to be more like a Corvette type class or like a starfighter type class thing, it was going to have only autocannon custom turrets on it, and it was going to be on sloped armor because I realized I can just put hinges in between sloped armor pieces to make turrets be sloped, which is what I was trying to do with this one. So there's a lot more sloped armor to it, and on top of that, I went back to keeping it in planet atmosphere. I'm pretty sure I made this one on the Earth-like planet. It was either that or Pertam, but I'm pretty sure. I'm actually pretty sure it was Pertam. It could have been on the desert on the Earth like one, but it was kind of too close. My memory's too blurry there to remember which one it is on, but that doesn't really matter too much. Uh, so there were slope turrets I was planning on adding. Obviously, the SIP was never finished, meaning I didn't put the turrets on, because I usually put the turrets on last when I make a SIP. Or at least the custom turrets, I put them on last. If we're talking about the large grid turret things, I usually just build those while I'm building the SIP. I don't, wait for a certain point to put them on. Another thing about this was that it's, as I stated, I think just a few seconds ago, was that it's going to stay on planet. So there are no hydrogen thrusters. There was just purely atmospheric thrusters. And there were actually it had four large grid ones, and then smaller ones, I think, built into the armor to kind of like the Mark II but like more of them. So it would be better. I think. I can't remember that part. Another thing I do remember was there was a massive room in the back of the set because I wanted to add a massive giant hydrogen engine to just get it to move to places really, really fast, like really fast deployment, and a large grid warfare uh, reactor, which is why I needed that massive room. It's going to be directly connected to the engine. And the bridge was actually not in the front with this one. This one, the bridge was actually like on the back, but on the top of the SIP, on the back top of the SIP, overlooking the turrets and everything that was on top of it or on the sides or whatever. It was way smaller compared to the previous ones, I'm pretty sure, but it was kind of odd to place it there. It kind of just felt like it didn't belong there because all the other ones, they had the bridge up front and everything. But I guess I just wanted to change things up for a bit. It also was going to have two small cargo hangars on the sides. Not enough to fit any type of SIP in there though. I guess it was just like for looks, like to pretend to be like a tiny cargo hangar or something. And I'm pretty sure I was going to have like actual rooms, like rooms that are like proper rooms with bathrooms and bedrooms and living areas and the kitchen and everything in there. But I can't really remember that part too good. And the last thing I remember about this is that I was going for a coffee theme with this faction. There is another SIP from the same, like, I guess you'd call it like a era or faction scenes or whatever, where I used the same color scheme for a SIP that I do have saved, which I'll talk about way later in the video when we get to it. But for right now, just for this, basically I was using a coffee theme because I guess I just didn't have, I guess I just wasn't creative at that time of what to use. But now let's move on to probably the worst SIP I've ever created, even though it's still unfinished, and it never will be finished because it's discontinued. This is the Attack SIP Mark V, which was the absolute failure of the SIP class. I was basically trying to innovate it so badly that it became like its own different type of SIP class while I was developing it. And then I caught myself, I was like, I'm going way too far with this. I'm going off the trail with the other SIPs. It just won't work. And it never worked when I tested and everything. It's never worked. And so obviously I just discontinued it. I think I was honestly just bored when I made this one. Uh, I guess the first obvious statement is it does not look like an attack subclass at all. It looks like something completely different, and that's because it played a completely different role. This one wasn't turret based. No, this one was purpose built to be a drop sip slash artillery support sip. Basically, that big area in the center of it was to have a bunch of tanks lined up together, fly near a base, deploy them, and then get back up in the air. And you can't see them because they were never added as custom turrets, as how I make them. But there were going to be giant turrets on here that were going to just like pummel the base completely down to the ground while the tanks were advancing for artillery type support. But obviously, they're never added. Same with the turrets up top for anti aircraft. The SIP was never finished, so they were never added. I guess one of the cool iterations or like innovations, whatever it's called, whatever the word is, that I made to this was adding solar panels to it. This will change for the next SIP class, which will be really positive, but for this, it really didn't do anything. It really needed that giant reactor hanging from the ceiling, powering the whole thing. Along this time, I actually put like actual cargo inside the SIP, so at least if it was finished, you could use it realistically and have like a way to actually transfer ammo to the turrets and stuff. But it was never finished, and I'm pretty sure the cargo containers were never connected to the turret areas where they're going to be placed. So obviously, it wouldn't have worked. One of the things I tried doing here, as you can see, I put atmospheric fans. Well, they look like fans, but they're atmospheric thrusters, the flat ones, on the sloped wings, which are not attached to the SIP. They are attached to hinges, which apparently means the thrusters don't do anything. They just they're just there, and they just don't add any additional thrust to keep it in the air for some reason. And that just made it so the small grid hydrogen thrusters in the back. This is actually the first like thruster pack I've made in the game, and I guess it's kind of like a positive thing. I was trying to make something new. It worked. I guess this whole step was basically a testing ground to try to innovate new ideas to SIP building, which will end up later on in later SIPs. But for now, it wasn't that whole like type theories I was going for really did not fit into the attack SIP role. And the thruster pack wasn't even powerful enough to keep it in the air even on moons. Or maybe it was. On all the planets I tested it on, it just slowly sunk to the ground with no care at all. Another thing to state about this, as you can see, the bridge was going to be massive because this was also going to act as like a mobile base as well as the two other roles as a artillery support SIP and a drop SIP. But obviously, yet again, SIP wasn't done, and the bridge was in the middle of being made before it was just given up and discontinued. This one also has landing gear, but like it really doesn't matter because I've never tested it, so I don't know if it would work or not. And the ramps don't even like retract to it, which is something I'm pretty sure I'd do now, but at the time, I guess I just went ahead and used armor blocks for ramps for some reason. I guess I was just like the whole thing was that I was flying to a moon or something in the game, and I was just on one like floating block heading towards it, and I decided to build a set based off of that. I wasn't really going through any like sort of idea or like plan to follow, which resorted in this, which is absolutely horrible. And I don't know why I even consider it a attack sip, but I made it with the motive of it trying to be one. So I guess it gets that classification. And now let's just move on to the last attack sip that was made, which it's not as disappointing as this one, but it's relatively disappointing and kind of sad. This is the attack sip Mark 6. It was also a drop sip, but for troops instead of tanks and other vehicles like the other one was. I guess it's got it there. It also actually looks like a traditional attack sip, which I guess that's also good. Uh, it uses it's a lot smaller. I'm pretty sure it's only half the size of a normal attack sip because this was made as a drop sip, and I was kind of like going through I was actually making actual war sips for actual sip to sip combat at this time, and I was just like, I remember that one sip I used to make. I want to get a little nostalgia, so I'm gonna try to remake it. I guess it didn't really have any big effects, just the fact that it was made, but it really was anything too special. It was really crammed inside. It could only fit, like, I think 5 or 10 units, unless you, like, just pack everyone in there. Then you could fit, like, way a lot more. But it just doesn't follow the, like, main tradition that the other attack sips did. Well, the, like, original three, I guess. But it still looks like one, which I guess at least makes me happy. The color scheme, I liked it at the time when I was going through there, but, like, I just don't like it now. It looks way too. I don't know what the word is for it. I just don't like it. It doesn't look as interesting. And it also doesn't play the role as a normal attack sip. I guess it could. It has stronger turrets than the Mark III, which is a way improvement to that if you think about it like that. But this thing basically had no armor whatsoever. One simple, like, good heavy turret shot could take this thing down with really good accuracy. And there's really not too much more to say about it except that it just has like a UFO alien type looking bridge on the very top of it, which is not in the front like it's supposed to be, but this is a drop sip, not a attack sip, even though it's classified as one. But that basically ends is like the end for this sip, and it's also the end of the category, so that means I didn't make any more tax sips after these six. I'm pretty sure that's how many I went through. So now let's move on to the next category, where I've made a lot more impressive sip designs, ones that actually work, and it also includes the sip I made that's so powerful. I think I'm pretty sure I've had it for around more than half a year now without ever changing it because it's just so, so good. And I'll be really excited to tell you about that one. This is the next category of sips, which is the Sledge class. And this is the Sledge Mark 1, the most powerful sip I have ever made, and continues to be the most powerful sip I have to this day. And it's actually the first sip I've made that is completely functional and really good, even though it is incomplete with its construction, which I've been using this as of now for around, I think, almost a year now of using it without ever actually improving it or finishing it. It's And all the upgrades that I'm going to talk to you about after I talk about this one, they just all failed against it, or like just were incomplete before they could even be tested against it, because it's, and the ones that were finished, they lost to it because it's just so powerful. In fact, it was so powerful that like even the mods I have that add more random encounters to the game, like difficult ones too, those just didn't even stand a chance against it. And this thing is still incomplete. And it's atmosphere restricted too. It can only be in atmosphere and atmospheric planets. It can't be in space or on moons and stuff. At least I don't think the atmospheric thrusters work on moons and stuff. I assume they don't. But I swear I remember having like a childhood memory where I tested it once. I'm not sure. I'm probably just going crazy. I'm really tired, by the way. But it's hard for me to start why I want to talk about this SIP. Uh, I guess to start with the colors theme, since we've been going with that first for a couple of SIPs I've talked about already. Basically, this was back when I was in school, my last year of school, and I was on the bus, and each day the bus would leave, and there was this one person's car in the parking lot. It was a truck actually, and it had like, it's like not a color gray, it's like a grayish brown, like as you see here, the main color of the sleds, that was the main color of the body, and then the rest of the other parts were black, and then there's a tiny bit of red on there. And so I basically tried, I was like, you know what, I want to make a SIP using those colors for some reason, because I guess they just looked really cool. And that's how I came up with the color scheme for my faxin during that era of me making SIPs. Or that one, to be exact. There were more planned, but they were never made. It was only this one. One thing to know about it is that there's no small grid turrets. There are only large grid block turret things that, you know what I mean. The turrets that you can just place down and they work. And even though it doesn't look like, it may look like too much to a few people, I feel like it's like right in the middle where it's not too much or too little, but it's just absolutely devastating firepower that this thing can push out. And like when I say that, I mean the only other SIP that actually stands a chance against it is another Sleds Mark One. Like it's a complete 1v, like it's an even fight too. They both like get knocked out of the air at the same time and continue shooting each other on the ground at the same time, and roughly around the same time someone's reactor goes down, but the other one is also critically damaged. So it's just absolutely insane with how powerful it is. It's powered by one reactor. However, later sleds marks add more reactors, or at least changes it. I think there's only one that actually changed the reactor type. It also has two hangars in it compared to the previous attack ships, which had no hangars. This has a like at least a hangar that's confined, like inside of it, that can open and close and everything. I'm not gonna lie, it is really creepy in there because it has the beam blocks which allow you to see into the wings where all the thrusters are. There's a bunch of open space, and I swear every time I'm in there, I feel like I'm just gonna have like Golem from Lord of the Rings just crawl out of there and charge at me for some reason. I have no clue why. That's it's just how it looks like. And that's kind of the scariest place on the set. The rest of them aren't that scary. The reactor room has, I guess the scariest thing is if it was realistic, because of all the ammunition in there, it probably wouldn't be safe to have guns and ammunition in there. But I guess it's also using it as a multi-purpose room to store the reactor and weapons. Then directly above it, we have another all-purpose room for programmable blocks if I ever need to run a program, and even more weapons. Then going forward from there is just an actual programmable room where it's just like the programmable blocks. And then from there is the actual true grids. However, if you didn't go straight out that way and from the second above the reactor room, multi-purpose room, if you just followed those staircases and door or whatever, you would reach like the secondary bridge, which I was making it the sleds and it looked so cool, and then I forgot what happened, but like I guess I like for some reason just wanted to add like a Star Destroyer type bridge on the top of it, and I it doesn't look too good, honestly. However, later Sledge versions, I did remove it, and it makes it look a lot better. So maybe that's something I should do. I'm not really sure. Or maybe I'll just be too lazy to ever remove it, and it'll just permanently stay there. I guess I'll have to make my mind up with it. But it's open, it's not defended from the back, and it's not insulated or anything, or like airtight. So I don't know why you'd want to use it. The only good thing it has is that it's quick access. If you're outside the SIP and you fly in there and start piloting it right away, it's really good for that. But quite literally, only that. And pretty sure that's all I have for this. Oh, one thing I'd like to know about this is that because it's flat how it is, if you do manage, it's very easy to make the thrusters get destroyed and make it go down. However, the solar panels on it, even if you hit the reactor, if it's daytime, that's enough power to power up the turrets, meaning it can act as a fortress, as a last stand or whatever if it crashes into the ground. So that's a really cool perk I really, really do like about it. And I think I might expand upon in the future with future sleds designs if I continue that type of SIP. Let's move on to all the other sleds that I made to try to counter it, but have failed or were just discontinued. I don't have the like blueprint saved, but I did go through like a month ago. I went through my DMs with an old friend, and I apparently at the time they weren't screenshots, but I took pictures of my screen with my phone. And so this SIP and the next one, I will just have to show you these images that I have them for. This is, like I said, Sled Smart 2. It looks a lot better than the Mark 1. I removed the Star Destroyer looking bridge at the top of it, which made it look a lot more menacing. It also had a lot more firepower, but at the cost that if one thruster keeping it up went down, the whole thing would start falling out of the air slowly, but it would start falling out of the air and it could no longer hold itself in the air, unfortunately. So the Sledge Mark 1 does win in that department, and I'm pretty sure a Sledge Mark 1 actually defeated this in combat. I can't really remember, I think it was just one battle or something, but I think it was that this one went down first, and then it was just like a full ground battle between the Mark 1 and the Mark 2 at some point. But that's kind of all I remember of that. Obviously, compared to the Mark 1, it has a extra third wing on the bottom of it. I thought, well, this would give me more room on not only just the inside, but also give me more turret room, and it could be used as like a ram if you want to ram enemy SIPs without damaging important parts of your ship. You could use like the bottom wing to just ram into an enemy ship and then have the damage absorbed there or something. I guess it also made this ship had like hydrogen thrusters in the back of it compared to just the atmospheric ones of the Mark 1, so it made it a lot faster there, but it still had so slow turning that the fast speed made it really hard to drive and maneuver with. Uh, Besides saying it has a lot more turrets and looks a lot better, well, a lot better as intimidatingly, I don't really like the color scheme. It just, I was trying to go for like a scientist or like a prototype type color scheme type thing. That's the best way I can describe this color scheme. But I feel like the inside makes up for it. Unfortunately, I don't have any images of the inside, but the best way I can describe it is that it looked a lot like an airship. Like if you imagine being inside of a steampunk airship, that's what this was. I used a lot of the newer interior blocks at the time, and which had like a lot of pipes running through them. So you every room you'd go in, you'd just see pipes and pipes everywhere. The floors, the ceiling, the walls. It really did look like you were inside an airship. And one of my favorite features was the like airship like bridge that was in the like joined area between all three of the wings with those windows going around it. I really like that area. Although it's never really used for anything, it was really cool to stand in. Also to the inside, it has room for two sips in the hangar, just like the Mark 1, except this time the bridge is like I think is that like a vertical takeoff or something? You basically have to land on the platform in the back and then roll into the hangar. And if you want to do like get out, you have to basically do the same thing. But that's not too much of a difference. At least I don't think it is. And besides, it looks a lot like nicer compared to the Mark 1. So another perk to it. And this actually has two reactors in it, large grid ones, compared to the Mark 1. However, the Mark 1, I'm pretty sure was still able to beat it and was just honestly better in all departments because if this thing crashed, the bottom tail would like angle at a weird angle, making it hard to fire, even move around on the inside anymore because of like at the sharp angle it'd be at. Well, besides Mark 1, if it went down, if it crashed, it could just act as a fortress, which is one of the biggest perks of why this Slides Mark 1 just works so well. Now let's continue this trio, I guess, or like this duo of the ones I don't have images for, onto the next one. This is the Sledge Mark 3. Yet again, same thing as the previous one. I don't have it saved, but I do have pictures for it. Originally, I was just going to show you a recreation of the blueprints I've made for it, or like a very, well, I consider a blueprint. It really isn't that much. Honestly, when I'm making things, I basically have the full 3D model in my head, and I build based off of that, rather than try to write it down and then base off of that, because I have the full thing in my head already. But I'll just show you the tried schematics I made of it, along with the only three pictures I have of it. First thing you can notice, this has a coffee theme type thing going for it, which was the same theme I was using for the Attack Sip Mark 4 strains. I think I was just trying, you know what, now it's coming back to me now, I'm remembering it. Yeah, that the Mark IV attack ship was going to be a anti-starfighter ship for this Sled's Mark III or whatever. Makes a lot of sense now that I actually put it together and say it out loud. So, a lot of difference compared to the Mark II to this one. there's a smaller wing added to the back of it. I was just trying to make it feel like it's more maneuverable. I was trying to make it look more aerodynamic than it did already. This is also unfinished. I completely forgot what happened. I think I got attacked in the middle of making it and I lost it somehow. Like I didn't have time to actually save it and blueprint it before it was like really destroyed. I completely forgot what happened. But it must have been something around there. At least I think so. Besides the other feature being that the color scheme in the wing is that the bridge of it has a full 360-degree view. I was actually using the one CIS main SIP, like the small ones that have like the bridge sticking out the front of them, as a reference for the bridge because I saw it when I was like, uh, I forgot where. I think I was just watching like someone talk about Star Wars on YouTube or something, and they played a video of Star Wars and that was on there or something. I'm not sure. But I saw it somewhere and I was like, you know what? That's a it's a full 360-degree view. I like where it's going. I'm gonna add that to my SIP. And it was pretty good. I barely finished it before I lost it and everything, or whatever happened that made me lose it happened. But that's basically all there is to the outside. I mean, there's obviously more turrets for the back wing or whatever, but for the interior, nothing. There's nothing in the interior. I actually hollowed it out before I started working on this, so there's not too much to say there. It was going to be really impressive if I did finish it, but unfortunately, whatever happened happened, and I don't have any more. So let's just move on to the next one. This is the Sleds Mark IV. It kind of has the same thing happen to it as the Mark V attack SIP. That being that this didn't follow the same trend as the other three Mark uh, sleds or whatever. It is a fourth of the size. So if you're to slice up a normal sleds into four corners, you took one corner that's the size this was. I I knew something was off when I was making it. I was making this in space, which I was making it during the time when I made actual sips, which we'll all talk about in the next part of this video, but or section or whatever of this video. But uh, I was kind of working on this in space at the time, and I had a lighting mod on, made everything super dark in space, and I honestly thought it was way bigger than it was, but it wasn't. I was still thinking about using it as like a support SIP, like how the Mark IV attack SIP was going to be, but it's never finished. And in the end, when I actually went back to work on it, after being down on the Earth planet or whatever, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna give up on this one. I want to follow the same trend as the sleds, otherwise it's not gonna be better than it. Uh, to talk about, obviously, new color scheme or whatever. Kind of like the Mark II color scheme, but better. This also had two hangers in it, just like all the other previous sleds is. Except well, I actually don't know how I fit the hangers in there, but I managed to fit them in there barely. They were kind of clipping like through the area where the bridge was supposed to be, so it was really a whole problem. There are also going to be no heavy turrets on here. Just small grid custom, not small. Yeah, they basically were small grid custom turrets all along the like interior, like the sides of it or whatever, where you can see those holes in the sides. Each one of those was going to be like a custom, what was it, autocannon turret on there. So a lot of anti-starfighter firepower. It also never had thrusters put in to go left and right, or backwards, or up and down. Actually, or down. There was the four atmospheric thrusters to keep up in the air, and then the four hydrogen ones to have it move forward really fast. Pretty sure I was trying to make this like a support step rather than an actual sleds. Either way, I gave up on it. But one of the things I do like about it is what I did with the grids. As you can see, I had like the people working on it, the working area, underneath the windows instead of directly in front of them. Meaning, if you saw it through a window, its windows aren't really as strong as a armor block, at least that I know of. Like a light armor block, or I don't know. They're windows. They're not supposed to be stronger than armor blocks. But that basically means that you can't directly shoot the people operating the SIP from anywhere above the SIP. I guess it's kind of a weak spot. You kind of want the enemy being like on, like right next to you, so all your turrets are focusing on them. I guess that's a fly overlooked when I was making it. I kind of just realized that now. But I really like the design where I had like a skylight over the people working and running the SIP, which I kind of kept that idea going onto my latest SIP, which we'll talk about when we get to it, because I'm really excited to talk about that one, because that's like my latest SIP that I worked on. I abandoned it for a better SIP, but I have good reasoning and I'll go into it for that one. But this is all we have for this one. So let's move into the supposed to be successor of this one. This is the Sledge Mark V, the successor to the Mark IV, or supposed to be successor. It's also unfinished for quote unquote good reasoning, I guess I could put it. I was in the middle of finishing the SIP, and the hell I realized I can make a better SIP. Like, I just randomly out of nowhere got the feeling, and like the blueprints in my mind, build this instead, which will be the next SIP I talk about. But for staying on course with this one, it had two hangars on the inside. Obviously, following the sleds, it's like a big trend to have only two hangars in there. And one of the things I really like about this is, as you can see, there's living spaces for the crew. Like, the reactors are inside the hangar bay, or like the hangar room. And like the crew rooms are also connected to there. And the bridge is just like one airlock away from the bridge. And I really like that. Like, just imagining working on a ship like that, where you're just flying out in the air somewhere, and you wake up, you look out the window, and you got like this whole. And I was gonna plan to have skylights inside the ship too, so you'd have like the sun piercing through. You'd be able to see the ships being worked on, and like the middle, you would see the other people's, and like on their balconies or whatever. They had balconies inside the set. It's crazy. I really loved it. It looks really homey in here, really comfortable. I was really proud of myself what I did here. It felt so open and so like connected, and it really, like, you didn't have to fear about, because like in Space Engineers, I don't have anyone to play with, so I'm by myself, and I low key, if I'm like really tired or something, I like get scared when I open doors because I'm afraid there's gonna be something behind there, even though it's not. And like just having it be that open, it just made it feel so safe for me for some reason. I'm really, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna add that into the next sip I make that I'm working on. I'm actually gonna note that down later to add that to my task list of what to add to the sip. It's really interesting. I took a complete turn on here. Uh, but to get back on course, it was basically taking the Mark IV and transforming it into a proper sled shape. This is where it's just there's so much to talk about this one that I'm really proud of. The bridge I'm not so proud of. It just kind of looks real weird. I'm not really sure what I could have done there better, but it was alright. I mainly just like the main open area. It just looked absolutely amazing. But this is where we start to see the comeback in what are they called? Thruster packs. So with the attack sip Mark 4, no, that's the Mark 5, yes. The failure one with its thruster pack failed. This one comes back. So all the other sleds they had like thrusters lined up inside the wings, but in here the thrusters are all contained within a long uh, rectangle that connects the body of the ship to the wings of the ship, which I really liked, and which is why when I saw that and I looked at it and I was like, oh my god, I can make a way better ship than this. I gotta do that. Although I had like some weird break period in between the time of me like this sip is when I gave up on like the I was using a Earth mod at the time to add like a planet to the game that's like supposed to be like a replica of Earth or whatever. And I kind of just for some reason I forgot I went off to play another game for like a month or something before I started working on the next sleds. But that's basically all I have for this one. And I just can't get over how proud I am and how good the main like connected interior is. I'm just really proud of myself for once for making something like just amazing like that. So let's move on to the sip, the most current sip I have, and the one that I'm also really proud of. Maybe even more so than this one. This is the Sledge Mark 6, or as I like to call it, the Crusader, because the way you look it looks, or if you look at like from the front, like how slim the bridge windows are, and the way it has like the thing through the middle, like a covering for like a nose of a Crusader helmet or whatever, it just kind of looks like a knight helmet to me at least, which is why I like to call it the Crusader. It also just kind of has that look to it. Speaking of the look, this is not like a Faxon look where I chose these things for my Faxons. I was making a sip and I'm like, I need like some temporarily color pattern to go with or style to make it look like a functioning machine, which is why I went with these colors and textures or whatever. This was obviously meant to be a successor to the Mark 1. None of the SIPs to this day have been able to beat the Mark 1. It's just so powerful. So I was like, you know what? It's time I up the game. I'm going to increase the length of the SIP by 50 meters. And that gave me a lot more room for the wings to add even more turrets. And I'm like, you know what? For this, in order to defeat the sleds, I need to go turret crazy. So I went turret crazy. I also went ahead and kept the two thruster packs connecting the body of the ship to the wings. They're not finished or filled. There's only landing gear in them as of right now. But they were going to work if the ship was finished. There's a reason why I didn't finish it, which I sound like a repeating recording or whatever saying this, but I felt like I could make a better sip, which I'm currently making, and I truly do promise you that the new sip I'm working on will be the greatest sip I have made up until this point. I absolutely guarantee it. But all of those secrets for it are going to be there when I make a video on it, whenever I finish it, which would hopefully be soon, because I have been working on it. Going back to this sip, I don't even know how many turrets there are on there. There's not even like the smaller grid heavy turrets. It's just the heaviest of heavy turrets to place down. This thing was just absolutely made for total annihilation. The one thing I like about it that I'd like to mention is how the bridge is. If you look at it as kind of getting thinking of like boats, like big cargo boats and stuff like that, like the big boats, and how they have that little area on like the sides where a person can go out and look behind the ship to see what's going on without having like the actual back of the bridge completely exposed to the back of it. And I was thinking that's kind of like a smart idea for a warship and space engineers because, well, if the enemy comes up behind you, you wouldn't really be prepared. But because you would have all that armor, you can just have like a little peeking area on the sides to see what's going on behind you. And uh, with the bridge and everything, you can see from the what sleds was it? There's so many at this point. The Mark IV sleds where it had the like windows above where the people are working. This is the same thing except it allows you to walk along the windows to look like eye level with them to see what's in front of you in case you need to do that. I don't see why you would ever need to, but in case you do, the option's there. That's kind of all of the inside of the set. The inside wasn't fully finished, except one thing to mention was for the bridge, there was actually going to be room for 4 vehicles instead of the typical only having room for 2 vehicles. And it was also going to have extra room inside the hangar so you could actually have ground vehicles. But there's a reason why I changed that out, which I'll go into when I make a vehicle. I'm basically going to make a vehicle video, like a video like I'm doing for this one, except about all the vehicles I made and not like the big warships I've made. So I'll go into that whole issue of why I stopped using ground vehicles, which is why I decided to cancel having that area in the center in the first place in that video. Which all know that'll come out. I can only record on Mondays, which I have a bad sleeping habit. But anyways, with this sip, I did bring back the wing on the bottom of it for like extra aerodynamic looking things, and the hanger has the same like is gonna have windows on the bottom of it, like how the Mark II sleds had, which I was also really excited for. Basically, I was taking all the parts of all the sleds I liked and mixed them all together and made this, which the next sleds I make will basically be this with all the parts of all the sleds I like mixed together, except with a bunch of life of quality improvements. The last thing I have to note about this is the 2 other extra wings on the top. It just felt more aerodynamic to add them. It felt more plane like, so I added them. And that's basically all I have for this one because there's literally no interior because I didn't make it. I was just making the exterior before I went to the interior, which is I guess the same thing that happened with the Mark III sleds. But anyways, that's the last sip in this category, and it's also going to be the sip that we set the video off on because that's all I have for you for this video.